Dobry den. Jim Johnson for Accent Help here. And what I'm going to do is actually take you for a little walk to my favorite view of the city of Prague while I talk to you about Slavic accents. So, again, the materials that I work on are not for learning those languages, but actually for sounding like those are the languages that you speak. So, Slavic accents. So Slavic is basically like a language family group. And so included in this is Russian and Ukrainian, Polish, Czech. I'm in the Czech Republic, or Czechia right now. I'm still getting used to saying Czechia. And Slovakian. So there are a bunch of Slavic languages. They share a lot of common elements to them, but they actually do have some significant variations. There can be some of them who can understand one another, and then some of them they actually can't. There are enough variations, and there are some sounds that exist in some that don't exist in others. So there are some really impactful variations in them, but they also have a ton in common. Now, what I will say is anytime that you are looking at any English as a second language accent, there are typically like a whole bunch of commonalities between them because they're dealing with things in the English language they're not used to. So I'm going to come back to one of those that's kind of a massive governing principle really with all accents. But one of the things to say is that there's a ton of commonalities that English as a second language accents have. So, for example, a couple of things that are super duper common, especially when we're looking at a stronger accent, is hardly any languages have the TH sounds. So like these things, the voiced one and the unvoiced TH, hardly any languages have those. So they're difficult sounds for most people to make. And that's why those are super common for various English as a second language accents. Here's a little bit of a preview of getting up higher, but we've still got a little ways to go to find this. So being old, I'm going to be out of breath by the time we finish this. So the THs are a big time commonality for consonant sounds. And then when you get into various sort of vowel sounds, most English as a second language, most languages, I should say, have a simpler vowel structure than English does. And so, for example, the diphthongs of A and O in a heavier accent will typically become E, O, in almost all accents of foreign language speakers around the world. And you will also really commonly not have certain sounds like the I, as in kit, doesn't exist in most languages. And the as in foot, doesn't exist in most languages. And that's why most of them, the I in kit and the in foot goes more towards the E and the U, so more like kit and foot. That's very, very common in all ESL accents, because those sounds don't exist in their home languages. So there are all these ESL elements. Well, one of the big things to keep in mind with any accent is that most languages are phonemic, meaning that the different vowel symbols, for example, they have a sound that they make. So the O makes the sound of O, but but when you get to English, that's not the case. So like an O is sometimes O, but sometimes it's something more like like the word some, S-O-M-E. And then you have something like women, where it's an I. So English spelling is a nightmare from hell, and that's part of why it's such a big challenge for a lot of people. Lots of kids out enjoying this beautiful day. So where I'm at right now is Letna Park, which is kind of on the north side of the old town area of Prague. And this is one of my favorite places. It's Letna Beer Garden. So let me give you a little bit of a view of Letna Beer Garden. And one of the things that I love here is that they do serve my very favorite beer in the world, Kozel Dark. So give me a Czerny Pivo. Well, no, specifically Kozel, because that's so much better than anything else, in my opinion. But anyway, I'll move on beyond the kids here for a little bit. So when you're looking at any ESL accent, what is super duper common is that they get guided by the spelling. So sometimes, I do recordings of scripts for people as well. And when I'm recording scripts, these are possibilities of what the sounds could be. They are not like, oh, this is what it is and always is, because you have variations. And a lot of the times that is guided by the spelling, because that's a super strong commonality. So I will say, because there are some commonalities like that, that's part of why I do feel okay about including in the Slavic materials some non-Slavic accents. So for example, Hungarian and Romanian have enough in common that I've included them. And there's a specific sound, for example, that ties them all together. It's one of the first things I always want to look at with any accent, which is the R sound. What's going on with the R sound? So that's part of why I feel comfortable including some of these other languages in these Slavic materials. They have enough in common, so it seems to fit it. But keep in mind, in trying to figure out, well, what are these sounds? Oftentimes it's going to be guided by phonemic. What do those letters seem to indicate the sound would be? And oftentimes that sort of overrules some of the typical sounds for pronunciation. Another thing that can really, what I should say with regards to that, one exception to this is Hungarian. So the Slavic accents, the languages are, they are in general much more simplified vowels. They tend to have something that's an equivalent of E, E, A, O, maybe also O, and then U. And those are really typically the vowels that are available. Well, you get to Hungarian, and there are so many vowels, and it's part of why Hungarian is oftentimes considered a really, really difficult language to learn. So, so acknowledging the kind of craziness of the vowels in Hungarian, which is pretty extreme compared to most languages around the world. One of the things to keep in mind that will affect the intonation, the musicality, is the stress. So Czech, for example, which is what I have the most exposure to, Czech always stresses the first syllable. So the fact that it's that you will say nazdraví, nazdraví, and it's that first syllable that gets the stress, that may affect you when you speak English. But then when you get to Polish, it's the next to last syllable, much like it is in Spanish. So then that can affect the pronunciation. And then when you get to something like Russian and Ukrainian, it's actually variations of what gets stressed. So that doesn't have sort of as predictable of an impact, but it's why you will oftentimes get sort of a mixture of stress on an accent. Some syllables or words getting stressed that you wouldn't necessarily expect, right? In general, there's not extreme musicality in these accents. And there's two major sort of intonation patterns that I want to talk you through. So one of those major intonation patterns is what I like to think of as the drag. And this is really common for Russian accents. So that Russian drag quality. So this is it, and I'm going, if anything, to an extreme here. This kind of press or drag is that intonation quality that you will hear from many Russian speakers, not consistently across the board. I've got a friend from Siberia who doesn't have that element, but he's also really worked on his English, so it's changed over time. But this will also be really common for many Polish and many Ukrainian speakers, this kind of drag quality. But then what you'll get sometimes in more like the Czech Republic is you'll get more like what I like to think of as cycling or almost a rainbow. And this is something that happens very commonly in many American accents, for example. This kind of cycling is more like a Czech accent. But what it doesn't have is a lightness, like Italian has that same kind of a cycling, but it's got a lightness to it, whereas Czech doesn't have lightness. It will have more of this cycling but with a heavy quality. So that's what you'll tend to hear from Czechs. And I'll fill you in on why my Czech, part of why my Czech was so bad, especially when I was starting to learn just a few Czech phrases. So there's not any sort of extreme pitch change that's very common. It tends to be in a more monotone or narrow range. And with some of them, this drag quality, and with some of them more the cycling quality. But it doesn't get that lightness that you might think of as sort of the RP kind of sound. Probably the most important sound for you to be aware of, and it's always the first thing that I want to get into, is the R sound. So what you'll get here is the tapped or flap R. So it doesn't need to be the trilled R, although sometimes it is. And if you struggle with a trill, it's okay. Keep in mind that there aren't a bunch of Spanish-speaking kids and Czechs who are walking around who can't trill, so you have basically just lost that skill, so you could get that skill back. One of the things I'd suggest if you struggle to do a trill like that is try tipping your head up and back. Sometimes that helps people. Also make it voiceless. Sometimes that helps people. Or think of it as the equivalent of what it may feel like a cat's purr or something like that. Sometimes that gets people over it. Anyway, you don't have to be able to trill, you can just do a tap. Which is the kind of thing that Americans do for D's and T's between vowels when it's going from a stressed vowel to an unstressed, or oftentimes from one word into another. What about if? What about if? That's a tapped R. What a. Or water. That's what's commonly called a tap or flap R. I kind of almost prefer to not think of it as an R, but just as a tap or flap. So that is the R that would be very common here. So as an accent is heavier, great, drive, will be what will happen for the R sounds. As the accent becomes lighter, it does what all English as a second language accents do, which is just goes towards a sort of harder R with the tongue bunching more to the back. Drive, great. So it just pulls back and up, typically a little bit more, and that's that sort of harder R sound you might think of it as. So that tapped R is really important. Another big sound that I want to make mention of here, because I've kind of mentioned like the vowels, right? Well, a big sound that I want to mention here, and I also want to give you a look at the most beautiful look of Prague here. So one of those sounds is the L sound. Now there's variations in this L in different languages. Sometimes the L is a lighter L, like I'm doing at the beginning of a word, light. But sometimes it's a darker L, like I'm doing at the ends of words, all, still. The way the tongue pulls back like that. That's called a dark L. And what you'll get for most Russian speakers, and you will get this to some degree in some of the other Slavic accents as well in languages, is that dark L, like, love, in, even at the beginnings of words. And that's why it's good for you to do that, too, because it's really helpful with Russian placement. Like, love, the way that it pulls back in the throat like that is very helpful for the placement. Now, a mistake that I made first when I was coming here to the Czech Republic was saying something like, "Děkuju," to say thank you, right? And I was doing it with Russian placement. Děkuju. So it was a pulling back like that. I was pulling back. I was also being a little heavier with like the consonants, like kuyu, that very heavy, sort of sluggish quality, that is more Russian-esque rather than Czech. So it took me time to get the kuyu, right? Dobrý den, instead of dobrý den. Dobrý den would be more Russian-esque. So it sounds like a Russian who's trying to speak Czech. But that darkness of that L can be really helpful for that placement. And I suggest you start there and then work to lighten it up as is appropriate for whatever the accent is that you're working on specifically. And one of the things that's really common here, well, let me give you a look at Prague first. So if you ever do come here to Prague, I would suggest that you come to the Letna beer garden. So here in the distance, you can see Teen, those towers there. We can't quite see Prague Castle, but way over on Petrin Hill over there is what looks like the Eiffel Tower. But this beer garden is just my favorite. You can see what a glorious place this is to hang out and have a beer. Let's see, over there is the TV tower as well that has the babies crawling up it, the bizarro babies. And we're looking out at the Vltava River here as well. And this Vltava River goes much further south as well. So like down in the south of the Czech Republic, Český Krumlov, the Vltava runs through there and you can actually go rafting down that. So what I was getting to is that working on that placement back there, that's actually what screwed me up with speaking Czech. And so what you do need to be able to do is lighten that up, but start with that heavy, darker sound as you're doing it. And that will help you to get towards this. I know this isn't everything about Slavic accents, but it gives you a little bit more insight perhaps into some of those elements, and hopefully also kind of connects for you a little bit more about how much different English as a second language accents actually have in common with each other. The vowels are super common between them. Most of the consonants are as well, with a little bit of variations, like what is their home language R. But even as the accent becomes lighter, it tends to go to that same sort of very pulled back, sort of hard or dark R sound. And then you might have those individual small things like the darkness of the L in Russian that can stand out a little bit. But otherwise, the most important thing when you're working on any English as a second language accent is to focus on the placement, that sense of where the sound lives in the mouth, the oral posture, the mouth posture, and to work on the musicality, the intonation, the prosody, the rhythm of it, the pitch of it, all of those things. Those are the most important things to work on when you're looking at an English as a second language accent. So if you want to dig more into any of these Slavic or Slav adjacent accents, you can check out the materials on accenthelp.com for Slavic or any other accent that you're working on. And it'll give you a much more complete breakdown, lead you through practice words and practice sentences and a practice monologue as well. And over time, I keep adding more and more recordings of native speakers, both reading certain things, including the practice sentences and practice monologue and such, but also just in conversation. And those are ongoing gatherings, like it's a collection that is continuing to grow. And all of it is available for you to use with your phone, with a tablet, with a computer. And you can even do downloads of elements of it so that you can work on it offline as well. But all of those materials are available at accenthelp.com, and they're constructed to try to help you to learn that accent specifically. But part of what I'm also trying to do is to help you how to learn accents overall. So that's something that you're continuing to build as you add to your toolkit, basically, or your tool belt, you superhero. So if you want some more info specifically about Slavic or any other accent, check out accenthelp.com.